Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Q at the Foldout Cat, coming to you live from our house, my house, and currently my full service fiber studio, where we are weaving, dyeing, carding, spinning, and occasionally teaching. Teaching is a little challenging in the day and age of COVID-19. Had one blissful moment in July of this year where Fiber J and I went to the Alpaca Owners Association Natural Fiber Extravaganza in Lebanon, Tennessee, to the east of Nashville. Met up with our friend Sherry Wilson, who runs Understory Saori, an official Saori studio, and had a great festival up there. And then the Delta variant hit and things went shut with a clang again. And so we are here at home for the weekend that we would ordinarily be spending in Berryville, Virginia, doing the Shenandoah Valley Fiber Festival. Shenandoah Valley is one of our favorite festivals. We did it in 2019 and loved it. And it went all virtual last year, and this year several vendors, including us, have remained virtual. Shout out to the fiberists who are also virtual this year. They are great guys. We met them last 2019 at Shenandoah, and we're very grateful to them. They helped us load out, which was a little bit of a challenge. Anyway, a good Sunday morning to you. I am here to do a little bit of freestyle weaving demo for you this morning. You are welcome to join me. Of course, if you're watching this, if you're watching it live, you have joined me by Zoom, and you are more than welcome. Just in case you are seeing this live on my Facebook page, no, you know what? That's going to turn technologically complicated. Yeah. No, just watch on the Facebook page. You can come to the Zoom if you want to. The link is there, but it should be broadcasting also. So I'm a little sleep deprived. I've been working very hard for this weekend, and also very caffeine deprived. And what now? Oh, you're going to fix that in a minute. Great. Anyway, this loom that I'm sitting at right here is a Saori loom. I am a Saori weaver. I am not an official Saori studio. I do not sell the Saori products, and I do not advertise myself as selling Saori classes, but I do teach what I call free-spirited weaving. Some people call freestyle weaving. In the Saori, following the Saori philosophy of weaving from your heart. And I teach it typically on very simple two-harness floor looms that are made by Saori's parent company, Saori no Mori. I have a herd of these looms, and one of the things I love more than anything is to teach on them. So one of the things I'm looking forward to as COVID-19 ebbs, when it does, notice I say when and not if, is getting to teach more. This is it's what's called the CH60, which is not relevant. The name is not relevant, but what's cool about this loom, most Saori looms fold. And so I wouldn't say that they take up no space, but they take up a lot less space than other floor looms. This one does not fold because it is constructed to accommodate a wheelchair. And in fact can be used by somebody who has the ability to use their hands and arms, but who is significantly to seriously mobility challenged as to their legs and feet. You can fit a wheelchair right up under it where this leg right here is. So I have this in my house. The rest of my herd of wheels lives in special protective cases that are what I travel with, but this one lives in my house. And so without further ado, I'm going to do some weaving for you all this morning. I'm going to switch the orientation of my body and move it around, and I'm going to tilt my camera just a teeny bit. There we go. All right. So let's see. Yep, we're good. So this is a Saori loom, as I have said, and let's see, it looks like I've run out of space. So if I put my foot down, I've got a problem.
Yes, cats have gotten to the hold on.
So I have multiple cats in the house, including a new one, Luca. And evidently at some point, sorry about the shakiness there, evidently at some point they foobarred my treadles a little bit. So Fiber J is behind the camera, figuring out what that's going to look like. Oh yeah, so they did. That was very creative.
I remember because I connected it back, but I didn't put it in the right place.
Okay, so we should be good now. Yeah, we're good now. Goodish now.
Is it not hitting?
I think we're good. All right. So this is where no, we're not quite there. What's going on?
Oh,
yeah, they're still crossed. Yep. Sorry about that. We have this set up, but you know, if any of you who have cats know that. Oh, so much better. Okay. Any of you who have cats know that you never know what cats are going to do. Yep, that's much better. Thank you. Okay. All right. So I'm out of room up here. And so I'm going to go ahead and take my break off. Give myself a little more space. There you go. Now, ordinarily, this would not be here. This is here because if it's not present, you can see the weaving below, and I want y'all to be able just to see the weaving that I'm doing with you. So I'm just going to have a bin next to me. I'm weaving for a minute. So this is a whole bunch of bobbins that I have left over from the Alpaca Owners Association, where Sherry and I taught classes all day on Friday and all day on Sunday at the 3-day festival. And these are all bobbins that I need to use up. And then these are all bits and pieces of fun stuff to throw in as what we call treasures. There's some hand spun in here, a couple balls of my hand spun. There are some bits and pieces of commercial yarn. There's some yarn from a spinning class that I taught at the Yarn Boutique of Decatur, which is my one of my local yarn stores. Hi, Yarn Boutique of Decatur. I'm looking forward to coming back to teach to you when COVID-19 lets go of us a little bit. I'm really missing those classes. So this is a piece of random white cord, you know, just in case you ever need some random white cord. This is roving that I hand dyed, that matted when it got dyed. So I turned it into super bulky yarn, all kinds of stuff in here. So I'm going to reach in here and grab a something. Let's see, I want something that's, you know, vaguely harmonious with what I have in there. So there we go. We'll start with that.
And here is your caffeine for the morning.
Oh, caffeine for the morning. Well, that's caffeine for this part of the morning.
Oh, yeah.
So this is called a boat shuttle. And these exist. Lots of people, lots of weaving manufacturers make these. This just happens to be a Saori one. It's called a boat shuttle because of the general shape. And so I'm going to open it up. It opens like a safety pin. So this is the central, I don't know the word, simple thing right here. I open that up.
Pin.
Pin, yeah, that works. Slide my bobbin on there. And I take the free end and thread, shove, thrust, whatever forceful verb you want to use, it through the hole in the front of the shuttle. And then I'm going to pull out a tail. And we figure out where I was. Where was I? I was right there somewhere. All right, so I'm looking, in this case, because this piece is sort of in progress, this is the last color I was using, and I can see the tip right there. It's not going to be very visible on the video, but I'm going to put my new yarn in from the same side. I'm going to overlap the ends a little bit. I'm going to put my beater down, and then I'm going to start weaving. So Saori is a form of free-spirited freestyle weaving. The philosophy was invented really a number of years ago by a Japanese woman named Misa Ojo. And it is designed as a form of weaving in which you practice imperfection. Now, you do not have to weave Saori on Saori floor looms. I hasten to add that Saori floor looms are great to do weaving of this kind on, but it is absolutely not required. You can weave, because Saori is a philosophy, you can weave in that philosophy on anything you feel like weaving on. So you can weave in that philosophy on a 64 harness floor loom that fills up your spare loom and then some, or you can weave in that philosophy on a pod holder loom or a pin loom. The important part is to weave from your heart. There are specific precepts of Saori, but this is not specifically about that philosophy. So I will just say that Saori is about practicing imperfection and embracing the fact that humans are not machines. One of the precepts of Saori is consider the difference between man and machine, or in my case, between woman and machine. Consider the difference between person and machine. That would probably be the best way to put that. Until the point at which cats learn how to weave, in which case it'll have to be considered the difference between living being and machine, and we will also all be in great trouble, because if cats acquire the ability to weave, then they're going to acquire the ability to do a lot more than that. So that was Fiber J's phone, reminding us that it is probably about 9:15, I would guess.
That's correct.
All right. So you can see I'm just kind of weaving along here. There is no plan for this. Every once in a while I stop, and I've got this long piece. This is that felted roving that I hand dyed that I was talking about. I've got this long piece, and I've woven a couple of rows of that in there. Now I'm going to, I've put it through the weaving, and I'm just going to do a few more rows on top of that. So that was Luca, who is the newest cat in the house, disrupting the camera pretty significantly. There we go. No, we're good. We're good. By falling off the window ledge. Our cats are, they are like the chief human in the house, which would be me, in that they are not known for their grace. And Luca is very large, and he is still figuring out where he can walk and where he is best advised not to walk.
Morning, it was the headboard of the bed.
Right, he was bouncing on the headboard of my bed, and the headboard of my bed curves down on the ends, and so he reached the end and teetered for a minute and then went rather catastrophically off. So, you know, that is what life is like as a cat, which is why I think if they learn how to weave, we're going to be in trouble, because at that point they will have acquired opposable thumbs, and I don't know that I think that's a desirable outcome. Let's see, I need something in here. Yeah, that'll do. That's certainly contrasting. I need another shuttle. Would you hand me another shuttle? Thank you. All right, so I'm reaching randomly. You can plan as much or as little as you want to with Saori weaving. Everybody does a little bit of planning. In this particular case, I've limited myself to these bobbins that I'm trying to clear off. And I have also limited myself to the treasures that are in that particular box. And so I'm going to add a random bobbin, and I'm going to alternate a little bit between these two. And one of the precepts that I teach by is that if you like it, if it's working for you, if what you are weaving is something that you find beautiful, then that matters more than anything else. I am not, as people who take my classes or who go to my demos or attend my live sales know, I am not the fiber police. I'm not a great believer in the one true way to do something. Particularly when you get to something large scale. There is certainly going to be a limited number of ways to properly weave twill. And if you're weaving a tartan, a specific clan tartan, Scots clan tartan, then there really is only one way to do that, as I understand it, and those rules are very clear. But for weaving as a whole, there is no one way to weave, and you have only to look at the richness of things that are available in weaving, all the different kinds of things that one can weave on, and all of the different kinds of things that one can make with what one weaves, to know that that is the case. So there is no one way to plan a piece of weaving. And one example of a way to plan a piece of weaving is not to plan it at all, and to just weave whatever comes up. Another way to do it is to choose particular colors, or to limit yourself to a particular set of textures. This morning, I'm just kind of trying to demonstrate that you can weave whatever you feel like weaving with. You can also weave with whatever you feel like weaving with. There was some grammar abstinence. You can weave whatever you feel like weaving. That's what I was trying to say. And you can weave with whatever you feel like weaving with. Got to be careful about your prepositions. Someone is going to comment on this video and tell me that that's the wrong part of speech. And all I have to say to you is my caffeine is still at my left elbow, and thank you for the education. So these are actually harmonizing better than I had expected them to. One of the things about Saori is that you try not to have a whole lot of expectations. I'm not very good at that. I tend to have very particular ideas about how I want things to go. And one of the reasons I am a Saori weaver, and one of the reasons that I teach it, is that I'm kind of required by what I do to let go of stuff. And I think that's actually very good for me. Ooh, I've got a pretty. Okay, Jasper's giving me a pretty. So.
Do it now.
All right. So I pulled a random treasure out and put that in, and you can see, you would think that the bulk of treasures might actually throw the Feline, which is the top line of the weaving, the working line, off, but it doesn't. I've got a treasure in here, I've got a treasure in here, that the Feline is doing just fine. I feel like it's time for a little more of this. So I'm going to put this in. This time I'm just going to, this is the felted roving that I was talking about. This time I'm just going to anchor the end. I'm going to let the rest of it just kind of hang off into my lap. All right, so I'm about to play out this bobbin. You can, when you have ends, you can let them dangle, or you can weave them in. I'm going to weave this one in. That tends to be what I prefer. But but there is no right way to do that. You can do either one of those things. You let them dangle. Thank you, dear. If you let them dangle, you can put beads or bells or something like that on them later. Or you can just let them dangle and be what they are. Saori is really all about weaving something that is beautiful to you. Of course, if you're weaving for someone else, it would probably be optimal if it was also beautiful to them. But the first thing is that it should be beautiful to you. It should be something that feels creative to you, that comes out of your heart, and that speaks to your spirit. And I maintain, therefore, that it is entirely possible to weave, double weave overshot on a poly harness loom, a complicated, 8, 16, 32 harness loom, and weave Saori. Because if you are weaving something that comes from your heart and that gives you joy, and that something is a complicated twill, then that you can tell that I know only very little bit about traditional weaving, traditional US and European weaving. But if you're weaving a complex pattern and it is giving you joy and it is coming from your heart, then from my perspective, you are weaving Saori. I am not a great believer in, as I say, the one true way to do things, and that includes the one true way to weave freestyle. If there was one way to weave freestyle, it wouldn't be freestyle. It would not be free of spirit. So I've got this kind of blue and brown thing that's going on that I'm liking more than I was expecting to. Oh, and I'm being fed some more blue, so that's exciting. Thank you, dear. Oh, and blue and brown together. Okay. I got a handy dandy assistant this morning. Fiber J is handing me, is one of my partners in life and in my business, and he is handing me bobbins as we go, so that I don't have to fish around for them. And that also introduces a nice randomness to this, because I don't know what I'm going to be handed. Hopefully, Luca will not firebomb, photobomb. My goodness, definitely need more caffeine. Hopefully, Luca will not be photobombing our presentation here again.
Yeah, and
of course they are. Okay. So I want to point out that this is kind of highly textured ribbon yarn. This is a commercial ribbon yarn. Let me see if I can get that more visible. There we go. So you can see that this yarn is one of those yarns that has sort of solid bits and then open spaces. I personally do not like crocheting with yarn like this. I am not a knitter, not because I'm not interested. I'm very interested, but because I just have not had time to learn how to knit properly yet. And what I know about knitting is that when I try to knit, my gauge is so tight that within a couple of rows, I'm basically hammering the needle into the stitch, and that is not good for anything in that equation, up to and including my peace of mind. But I do crochet. I started out as a happy hooker, and I don't like to crochet with yarn like this because my hook goes right through those holes. But it weaves up beautifully. And you can kind of see what's happening here is that we're getting these nice textured rows. You can't see it up close because where we have the camera, but you can see, I think that there are right here. This is where the solid parts of the yarn are bubbling up a little bit through the warp. And in between that are the parts of the yarn that are more open. Also, one fun thing about weaving with yarn, commercial yarn, that was not designed for weaving, is that it weaves up differently than you would expect. Most commercial yarn that is available in big box stores, and much of the commercial yarn that is available, I've got a treasure going in, thank you, dear. Much of the non-commercial yarn, a lot of the yarn that is available from independent dyers, and I know some really wonderful independent dyers from whom I have bought both yarn and fiber that I've met as part of my work with the Wool and Fiber Arts community on Facebook. Much of that yarn is designed for knitters. It is designed to be knit with. And that means that to the extent that it has been, that the colors of it have been designed in their frequency of their repetition, or in the way that they alternate different hues, shades, and tints. They have been designed in that way with the expectation that they'll be knit with. When you knit with yarn, as when you crochet with yarn, a portion of the yarn is inside the stitch. Essentially, knitting and crochet are both a matter of tying knots with yarn. And when you tie a knot, if you think about it, a portion of what you're tying the knot with is not visible. It is inside the yarn or inside the knot. When you weave, all of the yarn is visible. It is compressed a little bit because of the process of beating. That's what I'm doing here. I'm beating the yarn. Notice when I beat parenthetically, the point of beating is not to do this. I'm not trying to shove the yarn down. I'm not trying to actually beat the yarn into submission. Just trying to lay the most recent passive yarn, which is called a pick in traditional US and European weaving language. I'm just trying to lay a pick of yarn down on top of the previous ones. Not trying to force it, just trying to lay it down. So, oops, and that's what I call gate 9 3/4 weaving. I forgot I did not switch my feet. And when I put my shuttle through the shed, you can see, I think, I'll put this up, that it's unweaving, which is not a bad thing. In fact, I'll run with that. I'll let that be a little double line there. There we go. So when you weave, the yarn is flat, which means that less of it is hidden. And it means that the colors do different things and the textures do different things than the yarn may perhaps have been designed to have them do. And so one of the reasons that I like to weave with commercial yarns and with independently dyed yarns that have been designed for knitting and very occasionally, very rarely, but very occasionally for crocheting, is that the yarn does do different things than it was technically designed to do. Now, if you are a knitter or a crocheter and you make things that are sized, you will know that there is such a thing as gauge. There is, if someone who's using a yarn designs a project for that yarn that is sized, a top, a hat, a dress, a skirt, they will tell you, well, I've designed this so that it will fit this size of person, assuming that you knit this many stitches to the inch. And if your gauge is different from that, then you're going to need to adjust that. So of course, if your gauge is different from the gauge that the pattern has been written for, your yarn may do something creative in terms of the pooling of colors and the alternation of colors in your knitting or crochet. But it will still have some of itself hidden inside the knots that you're creating when you engage in those particular forms of fiber art. Somewhere. Oh, you read my mind. All right. Yay! All right. And that makes me think. Let's see, am I out of the other yarn? No. Okay. So I'm going to start doing, this is actually probably a little subtle to be seen. So what I'm doing is I'm putting both yarns through the same shed, but they're fairly close in color. And I think you probably can't see that on the camera. So I'm just going to go back to using just the one. Where is my, here it is. Okay, yeah, I can do that. So I've forgotten about this. So I'm going to cut that off so that I can maybe use it some more a little later. Let's see. This is a little tiny piece of independently dyed fiber that I tore from a braid. I teach a class called Muppets and Minis, where I show folks how to spin braids that you maybe are tired of, or that have gotten a little matted, or that you're not sure why you bought, or that you inherited from someone else, or caught in a bee stash, in ways that aren't just spinning down the braid. And so I've been tearing up Muppets and Minis, Muppets being long strips and Minis being, and yes, I am trying to find another name for those because that's a trademark term. Minis being little balls. The Muppets are usually about a half an ounce. The Minis are about a quarter ounce. And every once in a while, I find that I have a little extra bit like this. So let's see, I'm running a little bit out of room. The only aspect of the wheelchair Saori loom that does not work quite as well for me as the other looms is that because this loom is designed to be easily usable by someone who is sitting close to it, it has a short working area. And I sometimes wish it had a longer working area. I think it's time to commence the warp again. So the warp is under tension in two different places. It's under tension here where I'm reaching down here. This knob that you can't quite see because of the little mini picture of me is breaking the warp on the cloth beam, which is where the cloth that I'm weaving is accumulating as I roll the warp. And then there is a break over here that is holding the warp under tension on the warp beam, which is where the unwoven warp is living as it advances through the harnesses and the reed here. And so I am taking the break off the front, off the cloth, just to ease the tension there. And then I'm taking this break off, and you can see that eases the tension much more. And now I'm just going to turn this for a minute, and the click, click, click is the sound of the cloth break being on. And I want to get it pretty close to this, but I don't want to go quite all that far back with the break off because it's loosey-goosey now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten it up further. And now I have much more breathing room, which is nice. So if you are watching this live and you have questions, I encourage you to put them in, to message me if you're watching on through Eventually. You can also put them in the chat function in Zoom, which I will check before I end the Zoom. You can, if you're watching this on Facebook, you are welcome to put them in comments. I can't answer them live because there are only the two of us here this morning, and FiberJ is helping me. He's helping me. I'm weaving, and he's giving me the things to weave. So neither of us is actually able to monitor live comments, but that does not mean that you should not ask questions. So if you have questions, please ask them, and I will get back to you and answer them to the best of my ability. So here's the last of our little piece of Muppet roving. And I should mention, by the way, that I did not invent either the Muppets or the Minis. I don't know who invented the Minis, but I learned about them from Jillian Moreno, who is a fantastic spinner and spinning teacher and knitter. She's written a book about spinning to knit called Yarnitecture. And I've watched several of her classes. I haven't had the pleasure yet of getting to take her class from her in person, but I've watched several of her classes on Long Thread Media, which is now the parent company of Handwoven, and I've learned a lot every time. And she is the person who introduced me to the concept of minis. She did what she calls a sample along last summer that was spinning minis together with themselves and with solid colors. And I highly recommend that you look her up on the internet if you are curious to know more about that. I do teach a class on that. I'm not doing that demo this weekend. This, by the way, if you are not watching that, this live was recorded on Sunday, the 26th of September in 2021. Okay, so is that, whew. All right, so now for something completely different. Anyway, Jill, in fact, you know what? I'm going to pull that out and make a Ryan knot because that really needs to be seen. So Jillian Moreno is Jillian, Moreno last name Moreno. If you Google her, you will find her website and her blog, and I highly recommend them. I learned about Muppet yarn. Actually, I think they call it Muppet barf yarn from a fiber artist named Holland Kennan, who was given, let's see, I'm going to and put a little scrap of that up here. You can see, right, how improvisatory this is. I'm just kind of doing what I feel like doing. Holland Kennan was given a bunch of braids by a friend who wanted them to knit them, or wanted them to spin them so that the friend could knit a sweater for their husband. And the braids were kind of a motley crew, and so Holland Kennan stripped them all into half ounce strips, and instead of spinning them sequentially, which is another spinning technique, you can strip a braid lengthwise, braid of fiber lengthwise, and you can you can combine it with other braids, other strips torn from other braids, and spin them end to end. Holland Kennan held the strips from each of the 8 braids that they were working with in their hand at the same time, and they spun all 8 together. And as I say, they call that Muppet bark yarn. And I learned about that when I was looking at the program for this year's Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival, and they teach a class there on Muppet bark yarn, and I was just completely taken with that idea. So those are not things that I invented. They are things that I am playing with and that I'm passing on to other people because I just think both ideas are so much fun. Got another one for me? All right. That's very subtle. All right. So we're very nearly done with this bobbin.
And we're at 9:30.
And we're at 9:30. So I think at this point, I will wind this up as I'm winding up the bobbin, winding off the bobbin. I'm sure there's another better piece of wordplay in there, but as I mentioned, my caffeine for the morning is still sitting at my left elbow, and I can't quite do it. So final little piece of shocking yellow. That's some lock. All right. So this has been a demonstration of free-spirited freestyle weaving in the Saori tradition on a Saori floor loom. There is no one true way to do this. This is just me demonstrating, I guess, essentially that there's no one true way to do this, that whatever makes sense to you, whatever is beautiful to you, whatever allows you to feel that you are weaving your heart and that you're creating something that works for you is a good way to weave. And I encourage you to weave that way regardless of what you are weaving on. If you're weaving on a Saori loom, if you're weaving on a shocked baby wolf, if you're weaving on a gigantic Leclerc, if you're weaving on a pin loom, whatever you're weaving on, weave your heart, weave something that gives you joy. And life is a short thing, hard to realize while we're in it, but still true. Maybe a little easier to realize because of the difficult last year and a half that pretty much everybody on the planet has had. And it's important to do things that bring you joy and that you love. So on that sober and sermonizing note, I'm going to end this live. It has been a pleasure hanging out with y'all, and I hope to see you again soon. And then I will sit here and drink my tea at you while Facebook decides if it actually wants to end my live. Let's see. By the way, I'm sorry about the caterwauling. That's 2 of the cats just complaining up a storm in the background. A good Sunday to you. Weave on, fiber on, and do things that bring you joy.